what breaks my heart, and that's why I wrote the book, is that it's in a way, a lot of the coaches are so conditioned to dismiss the information to serve the incorrect interpretation of the competencies. This is where I also say it's so primitive. When the client says it is like an orchid, right? And then the coach says, if at all they relate, what does orchid mean for you? What happened? That symbology of that orchid, the fragrance, this is what is alive in the field. But then the coach took that and turned that into two-dimensional construct, and it lost its livelihood. Hello, everyone. This is Tizhanjenko, your host for Coaching with Mastery and Elegance with Tizhanjenko, and my main co-host here with me. Welcome, Sajili. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Tijen. Enjoying being back here with you.
It's always a pleasure. So, Sajili, what are we going to talk about today?
We have been speaking about this wonderful book, Comprehensive Coaching Taxonomy, which is really like an onion peel within the whole process of understanding oneself as a coach, understanding the coaching process, understanding the client. In that journey, we have covered the first domain, as you have expressed it in the book, which is the felt sense, and the second domain, which is the perceptual and structural domains. What is the client's experience and how are they organizing it? The logical step now is to move to the third domain, which is field, systemic, and symbolic. And I think a good way to start this conversation is to really ask you, how does one know that it's time to move beyond a person's inner world into a larger field of listening? And if I can, for my listeners who may not yet be familiar with the book, to say that this living field between two human beings, you define field in the book as the shared relational atmosphere between coach and client, including resonance, tone, and subtle shifts in presence. How do we pick up that sign that it's time to move to domain 3 in our coaching?
I think that domain 3 needs to be part of the whole exchange anyway, as part of the coach's presence and attunement. Yet, when it is intentionally brought into the exchange beyond the magnetic interaction that happens, is that when there is a time to step into the deeper psyche, when there is a time that the clients bring forwards archetypal information, cultural upbringing, symbology, and or the other things that is not being verbalized, yet the coach is receiving from that magnetic interaction, that is the field. Maybe then I'll just add a little bit more time. For people who are not familiar with the human energetic architecture, it's not only inside the humans, but the humans carry there is a toroidal field around the human beings, that which I start teaching with an exercise for the somatic explanation, the reach to define the edge of your field. People feel it, and then they come back and so on. There is then the field interaction occurs, and if coach is learn to attune to the field and not learn to not dismiss the field information being excessively westernized, they will receive information from the field that is relevant or seems to be completely irrelevant to what the client is presenting. Then how do you present that? Which we have an example today, right? That we're going to play a clip about that. We can talk more about that later on when we're going to play the clip. But these are the signs for the coach to integrate that additional information or slide into the deeper part of the psyche to make the exploration. Because if we think about those Russian dolls, right? There is a thing inside the thing inside the thing.
Yes.
So the beginning, we started with the very physical part of the psyche, the most superficial. And then we got into the next and the next, because the felt sense is the most superficial layer that people can intellectualize. I hurt my finger. This is physical. Yet the emotions, the next layer, and then how we do the mental constructs, the algorithms and all that, it's still getting a little bit more modeling, such as NLP and other ways. And then we get into the systems. That's the magnetic field just becoming more accessible to humans, but there is that relational aspect that forms us. So these are the indications that can support the coach to descend into that field.
Even as you spell it out, it just brings to my mind, or my felt sense, is how well assimilated it is for you. And yet, for many of us, as coaches, like you said, to be sensitive and not to dismiss it, to build that sensitivity, to cultivate it in that sense, because it's an intentional move for the coach.
Yes.
To then, like you said, be attuned and aligned to the possibility which this domain will then open up for the client.
It is, and as you said, an intentional, effortful reception.
Yes.
That requires whole listening, holistic listening, which I say, that goes beyond the ears and eyes and the five senses. To me, holistic listening includes much more dimension.
Yes. Yes. For a coach who is now sensitive to that, and so what then starts to emerge in this field, which cannot be discovered by either exploring, like you said, the emotion or the narrative?
So I need to speak a little bit more about the receptors. And let me give an example, right? If you think about the modern day surveillance of our house, right? There are sometimes voice receptors that they say, oh, there is somebody at the door, somebody speaking, and so on. Sometimes there are video receptors. They look at, oh, somebody is passing by, and so on. And then there are different heat receptors. They sense the human or animal heat. And so these are different information. And it is the same thing for the human. So when we are relating to another human being, there is our toroidal field. We carry a lot of information is there. And then there is their field. They carry that information in there. So what really can be sensed, that the change in heat, that's an information that shows distortions in the field, that you could sense how what they say and what their values are in alignment or not. There is often, for example, people pleasing is going to show up in the field as the lopsidedness. that because the central channel integrity is not there. You could also sense the membership, as I call it, information, the symbols and other things that they are in the field. The traumas are in the field. Unprocessed things are in the field. These type of information that is not directly translatable into the words, that they are going to show up as the symbols or the other forms of information that will come through the field.
I've heard you say this in another context, wherein you mentioned that, I don't recollect your exact words, but something to the effect that there is so much which is left on the plate unattended,
Yes.
which the client brings forth. And each time I hear that in whichever way, like this time you said, which is not vocalized, whether it's unprocessed trauma or the distortion any which way, it's visceral for me. And I think maybe I said it last time. It's heartbreaking to think that a client has so much of this and a coach is not able to receive it.
Yes, and the thing is, what breaks my heart, and that's why I wrote the book, is that it's in a way, a lot of the coaches are so conditioned to dismiss the information, to serve the incorrect interpretation of the competencies. This is where I also say it's so primitive. When the client says it is like an orchid, right? And then the coach says, if at all they relate, what does orchid mean for you? What happened? That symbology of that orchid, the fragrant, that this is what is alive in the field. But then the coach took that and turned that into two-dimensional construct, and it lost its livelihood. That is, it isn't about the meaning, but how is the orchid animates itself in client's life? It's a very different interaction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have spoken about in your book, and if I can show it again just for a second, although it's beautifully displayed behind you as well, you speak about domain two, which is the perceptual and structural domain. You speak about it in terms of being the middle layer of the arc, of the reflective arc.
Yes.
And as we move to domain three, which is the field, systemic, and symbolic, while domain two helps us understand the narrative architecture, domain three, the deep middle arc, it helps us discover the architecture which is generating that experience.
Yes.
Now, how would you explain this? How would you help us understand this? So, two parts to the question. How would you help us understand this so that then that can be a segue into the second part, which is, so as a coach, what needs to shift in my listening, in my reception to be able to respond?
So let's think about identity formations, right? We don't come to this world isolated beings. Just through the birth, by birth, we are already a member of a societal form, which is conforming. And therefore, our identity already defines itself by its membership to a family, to a country, to a this, to a that. And that already instructs our algorithms of calculation. For example, if I was born in Scandinavia, which is much more independent culture, or in the US, my membership to the family or the relatives and whatnot will be there, but it will not be the same way if I was born in India or Taiwan, right? Somebody on Instagram was explaining how in Korea, the address starts from where the country is in the world. And then it goes into the country, the city, and the individual. That already informs how the cultural membership, right? You are a part of an existing structure versus in the Western part, you start and then it goes into where you belong. So this isn't just about the address structure, but it also shows you how our membership influences our cognitive layer and how we become who we are or how we explain who we are, how we are free to explain who we are. So that's why the deeper layer. Is that helpful in explaining that?
I think very well for me, yes, definitely. That, like you said, that just by birth, our identity is already defined, and a part of our identity is defined and laid out with the membership at all these multiple levels.
Yes.
Yes, I
Yes.
think, and I like that expression, which instructs algorithm of calculation. Even as you say it, it seems so obvious. When you language it, I'm like, of course, yes.
Yes, it's very mathematical. There are membership arrays. And just if you think about the AI calculation, we're looking at, okay, I'm member of this culture, member of this family, member of this religion, member of a corporation. Is this an appropriate outcome of my behavior? And then we produce a behavior. But then the thing is that behavior is alignment with our truth, or is it being bent to fit into the membership? Therefore, second part of your question comes into the coach's ability to recognize these discrepancies through the field, through the self-expression, the deeper part of the identity formations, to bring forward for a resolution or at least understanding and come to terms with towards the agency. Because when they are left in the dark, we feel discomfort, but we don't know what it is. We want to break the chain at times, right? People tell you, oh, artist is a starving artist archetype. You cannot be artist. You got to be doctor. And you feel like, I'm an artist. I want to be an artist. And then that's when we start to see these breakthrough or attempt to break out midlife or some level of maturity arise and so on. But this is how we listen the differences.
Yeah. And the way you explain it, I can already see, and I'm sure as can our listeners, clearly see that we moved from the first domain, which was just the client's experience, to the second, which is now how is the client organizing it, to this domain, which is what is that algorithm and that membership, which is creating the touch points for that algorithm. And like you said, finally, is this client bending to fit in, or is there some natural flow there? I think these are very important markers.
It is. I love working at home. I'm highly sensitive being to my temperatures, my chair, and this, that, the other thing. But when I was in the corporate world, I will talk to people and they would say, oh, I would not like that at all. It's too isolating. And so you could see how they are animated being in the middle of everyone else. And then for me, I needed to bend to go to be part of that membership, but for them, it's the other way. So we are very different.
Yes. And even as you're saying that, so much from my own life and from the people around, I can see it's becoming clear, this whole bending and fitting in and willingly or otherwise. Yeah. Okay. So do you think this is a good place with this kind of clarity about what the domain is all about to move into the three explanatory aspects or sub-aspects, which is the symbolic inquiry, the relational and systemic, and then the field inquiry. So help us understand the nuances of this domain. The first aspect which you highlight is the symbolic.
Yes.
And I think first question right up front would then be, why are symbols more revealing than all that the client is explaining? For example, you spoke about the orchid a while ago, right? And the client would have definitely given us a story and etc. And what makes that symbol more significant, more revealing? I think that's really still the word.
It is revealing, but it's also animating. There are researches being revealed now that the human memory is not a static storage. It's dynamically constructed. And therefore, then the symbol can carry a larger container of meaning making. So if you think about how I understand this pen and store it in my memory as a pen, it's one thing. But if you don't know that this pen is just a pen for me, but this one was gifted to me on my birthday because orange is my color or whatever, then you're going to see that I have a lot more information stored through a symbol. So the standard algorithms, and as I distinguish in my other book, more like emotionally charged words, significant words, there are certain things are going to come much more animated in the language than the others. Because it's like, if you think about the data, that there is some data, right? We talk about 5 gigabytes of wireless quality, high resolution versus 3 gigabytes of data. So there are magnitude of information packed into the client's psyche coming through one symbol. And I think now this is time for us to just show what I just said through the clip that will give that more information to the audience. Do you want to give a little bit of how we started? What was your focus before we play the clip, and then we can play?
Sure. The clip is when, for our listeners, when I reached out to Tijen and I wanted to be coached, because I was just finding that there's almost a split in me, in the sense that there are some activities which are in such a flow in me. They're so effortless, and I've never really regarded them. And in this case, it was about creating an aesthetic environment or creating an aesthetic look. And I take it for granted, let me put it that way. And I've always pursued something which required efforting and a lot of hard work, and I will struggle with it, and then I have to learn, and etc., etc. And I was just at that point where I wondered about this and said, why is it that something which comes to me has not been valued by me for all these decades? And I think, unless you want to add something to this.
Yeah. So that was our session focus, right? What makes something so easy and I don't regard as much, and then other things are more effortful. And you could see then, although at the moment we're going to start with my reflection, which information I received from the field that was not mentioned by the client, but my presenting a symbology, how actually starts to shift the client's cognitive field to support their awareness. So let's just play.
And if I can just add one more thing, as I recollect the clip, that I think also our listeners can be attentive to the kind of question that brought forward the symbolic awareness and how you built on that.
Yes.
That can, just a little attentiveness. Of course, we can unpack it later, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, because you could see that deeper layer presentation of the symbols started to dismantle the client current construct in the further layer. Yes. So pay attention to that. Okay. Stay with us. All right. Let's just do this now. When I listen to you, I keep thinking about the three rivers in Varanasi, their emergence. So I'm wondering, Paji, this part of here that is equal reverence, how does that flow in your system? Wow. Okay, now this blows my mind. I need a minute. I have no clue. I've not thought about this. Oh, God. Yeah, it's just like, I should always start. Better take up, maybe setting. All those three rivers are sacred rivers, very sacred rivers. And two of them are visible. And the third, in the language they say, it's hidden. It emerges and disappears. And there are, of course, beautiful stories around that. I think the first thing that strikes me to share, and this struck me immediately when you said three rivers, and I saw the confluence, because one has been visited there, but it was out there. With me, simultaneously my sense was, good Lord, I'm not together. They're like parallel lines in me. I think those there appears of integration. Really, integration is a big word from the way I felt it. But to say how do they flow in me, why I also love this, because it's so in sync with what I just felt, which is that each part of me, whether esoteric or not, has a certain respectful place. So in that sense, each part is sacred, and the visual which you brought up is of three sacred rivers. So that's very pleasing. In terms of the flow, so the part which is, like you said, hearing what wants to happen, and I'm calling that effortless and ease and etc. That is quite blue and frothy and bubbly and almost naughty and in a flow. There's a lightness to its being. Art, which has been all my life, my study and take this exam and do this and qualify this and da and then run a business, and then you set targets for your team, and it's always goal oriented, which is how it is. Or you're doing your masters, you have your submission, you're teaching, you have to prepare, all that. I love all that. The coach, the mentoring, all that. That feels like that has various hues. There are stretches where it is roundish and sluggish. Then there are stretches when it's seeming like it's very still. There are noisy aspects, there are aggressive aspects, that is quite a concoction. Yeah. And now I'm going to ask myself, so that third hidden river, what is that all about? I don't know if I'm making this up, or I just have a sense that it's underneath and it's kind of, so it's underneath and it's embracing both. In a sense, holding both, maybe. And I think that I can call authentic. Even the river with ease, I didn't use the word authentic because it didn't come to me. But I think what's underneath is some authenticity which is holding them both. Something like that, Tishan. That makes me now think about the central channel and the Ghana and Ghana, autonomic nervous systems and both sides and the emergence. The way you're describing, they both very lively in their currency and different expressions they're presenting. Yet, seems to be now you arrive at the organic flow that holds both and authenticates into life.
Yes, and yes, what you say is how it is. And maybe something else strikes me, which is that somehow when you said the organic flow and the authentic enough, somewhere I may not fit in with what's expected, and therefore I choose to keep my way.
Okay.
Really, it was like a hit. I was just totally caught off guard, rattled. It's almost as if you stirred something very deep inside.
Yes, because what was happening as a coach for me, and you asked me earlier, how does the coach notices when it's time to use symbology and all that? So what was happening in your presentation, that you were expressing two sides of your identity that almost had no permission to come together. They were alienated relatives that they didn't know why they cannot come together. So for me, I really felt it in the field for you. And this is just because I can also speak some similar symbology, being familiar with some part of your culture, right? So I thought of that, instead of intellectually presenting that to you, that would have gone through the same algorithm that separated them from the beginning. What happens, the deeper psyche and therefore that's why you became restless, because the membership said, oh yeah, but in your cultural symbology, this exists, this is okay. And therefore your membership algorithms, that construct that they cannot be together, started to see. And if you notice, your tone already changed all of them to sacred, because before you were dismissing one part that already shifted. So what are your thoughts as a person that experienced and also helping me unpack this today?
Yes. So I think it's a beautiful example because I can be very quick at analysis. And I'd already done so much analysis.
Yes.
So I think this is a beautiful example that if, as a coach, you had asked me questions, I would have been in that same quicksand, so to speak, of analysis, and I would have just been regurgitating the same things.
Correct.
I wouldn't have moved forward. Maybe a different language may have come forth, but within that same limitedness.
Yes.
And what happened with the symbology was all this which I was doing, and there was so much movement in the body because I had no place to stand. All my typical tried, tested, familiar places were not available to me. And that's where I could see very clearly that I've made it an either or, what you called alienated relatives. I'd really made it an either or without ever realizing that that each one is sacred, is reverential. So I think what happened as you suggested this symbology was that everything took its rightful place and in a more integrated manner.
Yes.
And also, I think what was in the unsaid for me was, oh my God, what I really want at the end of this coaching is to be able to choose. Should I go this way or should I go that way? And there was no meeting point. But as one went through this process, I realized that there is no need to choose.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be so watertight. And that whole authenticity, which I found as that underlying submerged invisible river, was really a fundamental value which with which I chose to live my life, and it just wove together. It just helped weaving the whole thing together. And really, even as I listen to it now, what I've been living since is that there is something which life is offering, and how can I be a receptor for it along
Yes.
with being authentic. So I think it's just opened up my space, and not from here, but from a much intrinsic space inside of me.
Correct. And that's the deeper layer.
Yes.
And the thing is, you're a very smart person. I'm not going to make my work hard, make your work hard, right? As you said, your current algorithms are going to produce the same outcome. So I call this a back door. And where we were seeing you're doing all that, it was actually rewiring your new neural pathways and producing new cognitive algorithms based on, as you just explained, the core value now. They are in alignment, which is always my thing, the bringing harmony to the system, transcendence from this harmonic place into the harmonic place. So that's with one symbology, you could see how efficiently in 7 minutes, right? How much of your life could change.
Yes. True. And interestingly, what's also striking me, although it was a question which I had put, which was about how do symbols evolve as the coaching unfolds?
Yes.
And I'm thinking now, as I think of that symbol, how it's evolved is it's alive, and yet at some level it served its purpose.
Yes.
And it's allowed me to be in my authentic flow.
It is exactly these archetypes, the cultural symbols, the understanding, they are not static. So it's in a way, they hold the container, but the thing is, where we relate to them, we can make it constraining, confining, or like a shadow archetype versus the light form. So there is that level of interaction in the symbology. And really, to me, the higher levels of mastery, it doesn't matter who introduces to the coaching conversation, whether the client or the coach. In this case, I brought forward in support of the client, but maybe your symbology would have been, you said either or and so on. I even avoided engaging in the cognitive dissonance, which I teach that course, right?
Yeah.
Because you already are aware that it is in its limits. We could have been, if it is not black and white, what it is, which you gave, right? The brownish and the bluish and so on and so forth. We could also do that. It's okay. But it is also using your sensory system as a coach, perceptual system as a coach to determine and evaluate beyond the cognitive self.
Yeah.
Because the field reading, the most influencer that science finds right now, the magnetic field of the human magnetic field, is the heart. So then it is much more heart interaction with the client, heart to heart, versus to heart to head, head to heart to gut, and so on. So it's in a way that the coach becomes more fluent in their receptors and to evaluate what part of me I need to engage and to have this conversation. People ask me, how much time do you leave in between the sessions? Never 5 minutes, because that level of listening and attunement takes more time for me to recalibrate myself to me before I can do that again.
Yes, wonderful. Yes. And I think I also want to bring up, which was, although it was a question, but I think it got highlighted beautifully, that as a coach, you not once did you interpret the symbol for me or put language or put words into my mouth.
Yes,
So I think one thing which the coach can definitely avoid while working with symbols is, while the coach may suggest it if it's appropriate, but beyond that, how the client relates and unfolds through the symbol is for the client to do.
exactly. And that's actually because it also reduces the potency, because now we're bringing into the level of the language versus you now receive the symbol. It started to interact with your nervous system and your cognitive system. So it was done through different channels of processing. Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
I think that can take us to the next within the domain. After the symbol, we come to the relational and systemic. And just one thing at the symbolic level, there is a course which you are offering.
Yes. One of the things you asked me, how the coach determines and understands. So one of the ways that I train myself and I teach others now is to interact with symbols as symbols, not the translation of the symbols. So therefore, this is a unique offering that introduces coaches or individuals, whomever is interested, 5 weeks of dream journeying. So they will be interacting heavily, picking up whatever they wish to make a change in their life. And then we go through a archetypal mythology that in ancient Greece, there was an Asklepion dream chambers of healing. We will visit different parts of the dream chambers, and the participants see their own symbology and interpret just like you did on that interaction to come into their new awareness and new levels. So that will enhance their own journey into becoming, but it can also help them start to understand how to speak symbology with another being.
I think this is very important what you just said, because you see, it's like if I haven't eaten something myself, there is no way that I can really express its taste or flavor to you.
Right. Yes.
I cannot offer it to you. But if I have immersed myself and experienced something for myself, then I'm able to offer it to my client and hold that receiving space for them.
Absolutely. And this is why it's a prerequisite for my dream and symbology coach training, for people to start at least get to some level of infancy in their speaking before they can facilitate that level of interaction.
Sure. This is an offer which is wonderful for any coach who really wants to, how we said in the beginning when we spoke about the domain, are we sensitive or are we almost dismissive of it? But even if I'm sensitive, that is not enough. It has to be intentional to learn how to be able to hold that, to be the receptor, to speak about it.
Correct.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. And if we are interested to know more about the course, we can go to your website.
Yes, it is right now open for registration. We're recording this on August 21, 2026. And the course is going to start in September 26th, Saturday. And it's going to be run through the Saturdays, 5 week into October. And the registration is open at Jenko Coaching website under upcoming events. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, well, as we move into the next aspect of this domain, into the relational and the systemic inquiry, I think the first question there is how, as a coach, does one know that it's time to explore the relationship rather than any aspect of what the person's story seems like.
We talked about the membership arrays that influences our cognitive algorithms. And we talked about how cultures and individuals are the product of the cultures they process, such as the Korean address structure versus the Western address structures. So when we are listening to the client, we can pay attention to is what they're expressing as a result of their sovereign agent self, or is it reshaped or distorted or influenced by their membership to the system or systemic interaction? And in your case, you came back and said, I decided to clip my wings because there is the belief I cannot be both in this system. I can either do that or do this. So that's the moment of an invite to shift into the systemic structures and how the person receives the system, how the system influences the personal behavior or the construct.
So this is also then, Tijen, I had this, it's also helping the client distinguish between what belongs to them and what they are carrying just as a member of a system.
Correct, because most of these things are unconscious patterns. When I started to came back and govern my own domain, I started to use the language, I exit the culture in this topic. Because I found that some of the things that culture does, which I can honor, but I do not want to participate. But the thing is, these memberships are birth memberships. We are born with the operating system that we are not necessarily looking in, oh my goodness, what was in this system when I bought it? So in this case, there are certain things needs to be unearthed. So then the person have the agency to choose, even if they choose to continue to comply with something isn't fully aligned with their value system, but they take the agency to say, it doesn't fit me well, but I am going to do it because of the other value I have, or something is important for me. We talked about how gift giving is important in our cultures.
Yes.
I say that I don't find value in it, but I find value in being respectful to what others believe in. I can use the other value, then I don't need to dismiss a part of my identity. So this level of coherence then returns.
Sure.
Because I just use this word now, I want to say more that one of the things we receive as a coach when we are attuning ourselves is the coherence. I was listening to you through the where are you coherent and when are you not coherent through my heart chambers.
That's a wonderful aspect because I was just going to ask you, so what tells you that a relational pattern has shifted within that conversation even before actually the external situation has changed? Somehow, as I'm listening to coherence, there seems to be a linkage there.
Correct, because once you rewired your neurology and established new neural pathways and provided yourself with the new cognitive algorithms, you now could see that you did something. It was in your agency. Before, you didn't see that it was your choice. You felt that choice was not belong to you. It was dictated. And that was also producing friction between you and the system. And that's when I felt it like now I can work with you because the availability is cultivated for change.
Yeah, beautiful expression. The availability has been cultivated for change. Yeah, wonderful. Anything else specifically which you would like to say about relational? Because I would then like to move on to the field inquiry, which is the third aspect of this stuff.
Yeah, let's go into that then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How is field awareness different from just reading an emotion or a body language?
It is very different, as I gave examples at the very beginning, like one is audio sensor, one is a video
Yes.
sensor, one is a heat sensor. Field awareness is a deeper magnetic coherence, receptors, and it's a different level of listening. It also listens the vector. I'm going to get into the whole geometry and the architectures of the human magnetic field, but one can feel these distortions in the field. One can feel the heat pockets in the field. One can feel the symbols in the field. And it's also available to feel when you're in company with someone, right? You could feel like, is it flowing or is it frictionless? We often teach the coaches pay attention to the tonal vocal cords, right? Because when there are spikes and that spike is something in the field, shows incoherence in the field. So the field carries larger information, including the systems and the symbols and other data. It is the larger packets of data that comes to more smaller packages as it comes to us.
Thank you for reiterating. And in this process, it's being received by the coach, like you said, the data in smaller packages. What are you hoping that the client will notice as there is a shift in this field, in the space between the client and the coach?
Let me ask you that when you arrive to the moment, you're asking me more between you and the coach, but let's start there. When you arrived to the moment where you said, I clipped my wings, what happened to the field around you?
You used the word agency a short while ago. Yeah. I think what happened to me at that point, and it comes alive to me again just now, is that I saw how I was carrying baggage, whether baggage of membership, whether baggage of any algorithm, whether baggage of any expectation, which I had actually long outgrown, which I had done so much beyond it already. And yet somehow, at some level, I was still feeling trapped. I could see that.
Yes. So then it is going to mirror in your magnetic field.
Yes.
So when
Yes.
that opens and softens, how are you also going to relate to any other human, especially the one you really trust in a coaching session?
I can almost feel there was a shedding here. Yeah. And that lightness of being and that freedom with the sense of agency,
Yes.
not just in the air, helps me be more grounded and also be more, I'm going to use the word authentic again, be more authentic to what I offer and what I receive.
More authentic
really.
connection,
Yes.
more
Yes.
secure, safe connections,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that also is going to shift between the coach and the client because, yes, that pattern of yours appeared to show up in different things, but it is not doing it in isolation. It is present in your energy field. It's going to affect your every relationship, including you and me as a coach in that session. Me as a coach, more authentic I am, more authentically project myself into the field between you and I, is also going to be an invite for the client, silent invite to come to their agency. It's like a tuning fork. I'm giving the more authentic sound to tune the musical instrument, but you can decide to tune into that authentic sound or not.
Yes, yes. Yes, yes. Although it's a question here, but I can also see now how one is not being, in that sense, mystical about it or vague. It's very formed and, in that sense, spacious yet specific when you speak about all this.
It's very mathematical and very scientific. I'm not teaching this as an esoteric thing.
Yeah.
It is very clear how our algorithms are being produced.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes. So I think, Tishan, we've spoken a lot, and I think what I would like to end with really is that how now this domain includes symbolic, systemic, and field awareness, and how do they work together?
Symbols are the larger containers of our identity structures. They are indicative of our systemic memberships, and the field is the container of that beautiful structure. That is the gateway. And the thing is that sometimes the emanation of that field, just the tuning the field, can change everything without the cognitive processing, right, which you experienced. It doesn't have to be, this is why I talk about transactional coaching, transformational coaching versus transcendental coaching. Transcendence is sometimes in my energetic coaching practice, I could just inquire through the energy. I don't need to verbalize it. And this is where we experience in the sound healing, right? That they play the gongs and it changed. How is that? Because the magnetic field changed. It's reorganizing itself. These are built intelligences of the human system that we are just keep teaching people, you only get to push this one button, don't touch anywhere else. And then we leave a lot on the table, unattained, unattached, unprocessed, unrealized.
Yes, and even as you explain this, I think I can really see how important it then becomes for any individual wanting to work on themselves or for a coach to be able to speak about all this and to refer to the course which you just spoke about, which starts 26 September, the guided journey.
Yes.
Yeah, Asklepion. Yeah. Okay. So there is also a Genko resolution circle.
Yes.
And so can you tell us a little bit about that and how that
Yes,
enhances
there are layers of the membership, right? The first 50 people get the book and they register it through the website page. They get to be in part of the inner resolution circle that they can actually meet me and also ask their individual questions about the book that I will be hosting live as a workshop for that first 50. And then next 100 becomes part of this resolution circle, can be a member of the private LinkedIn group to interact with others. And so there are different layers on this circle. And then the idea is to understand these deeper parts or more cohesive part of the human psyche and able to speak these languages and use the book as a guide, whether they are a coach or any human that wants to have a meaningful communication or their leadership. So that there are benefits of that. And the information is in the very first part of the book. Details are there as well as on my website, Jane Craner Resolution Circle. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tish. And not only do we have the book and conversations like these, your podcasts, we also have opportunities through various study courses which you offer, and also the Resolution Circle to continue to expand our holistic listening in that
Thank
sense.
you, Sajili, as always, for being my companion and a partner as we unpack this. And our listeners who just listened, Domain 3, with us in the Comprehensive Coaching Taxonomy book. And remember to subscribe if it resonates. Anything else you wanted to say, Sajili?
Nothing. Always wonderful to, there's always little bulbs going up in clarity as I speak with you.
Glad. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.